Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Now, if you've been following science or tech news at all lately, you've absolutely heard a specific buzzword being thrown around everywhere, from biology labs all the way to Silicon Valley. That word is emergence. It's this catch-all concept used to describe everything from, say, how a flock of birds moves in perfect fluid unison, all the way to the sudden, really surprising reasoning skills we're seeing in artificial intelligence. But today, we are not just throwing around buzzwords. We're actually going on a deep dive right into the very fabric of reality to unlock the mystery of how parts become a whole. And that brings us to a massive, incredibly fundamental question. What actually happens when parts become a whole? When these insanely complex systems form, are they just following mind-bogglingly complex math that's built on basic physical building blocks? Or do they somehow jump a level and create fundamentally magical, entirely new rules of reality? Okay, let's dive into this. To find the answer, we're going to test this idea across 4 massive frontiers. First, the 2 flavors of emergence. Second, the ground rules in physics and biology. Third, the AI emergence mirage. Fourth, the boundary case of consciousness. And finally, number 5, the final verdict. Right, let's kick things off with Section 1, 2 flavors of emergence. So we really need to establish our baseline definitions here, because we are actually talking about 2 very different things. On one side, we have what's known as weak emergence. Formulated by thinkers like Marc Badiou, this describes phenomena that are, in principle, completely derivable from the lower level. It's just computationally wildly impractical to predict because of sheer complexity or sensitivity to initial conditions. Think of it as an epistemological limit, meaning it's just a limit of human knowledge and our current computing power. But on the other side, we have the radical idea of strong emergence. This claims that higher levels are irreducible in principle and possess genuine downward causation. As philosopher David Chalmers distinguishes, this is an ontological jump. It basically means brand new properties just pop into existence that do not simply follow from the underlying physical base. Moving right along to Section 2, ground rules in physics and biology. Back in 1972, the physicist P.W. Anderson formulated this profoundly influential yet incredibly simple idea: more is different. What Anderson was arguing is that as complexity grows in any given system, new regularities and completely new levels of explanation appear. But, and this is absolutely crucial, this does not require denying the underlying microphysical base. To show you exactly what Anderson meant, just think about physical phenomena like phase transitions, water turning into solid ice, or superconductivity, superfluidity, renormalization, and topological structures. These all brilliantly illustrate that a high-level description can be completely indispensable for us to actually understand the system, without it needing to be fundamentally separate from microphysics. Science just uses effective laws here. It thrives without needing to invent any supernatural new rules. And when we scale up to biology, well, the story is incredibly similar. Whether we're looking at systems biology, homeostasis, or the actual origin of life itself, we see just astonishing levels of self-organization. Modern biology absolutely forces us to reject naive reductionism. I mean, you simply can't fully grasp a cell just by staring at one isolated protein. Researchers like Dennis Noble heavily stress the importance of multi-scale models. But critically, this still doesn't require us to abandon physicalism or somehow postulate independent, strong emergence. All right, let's step up our ladder of complexity into Section 3, the AI emergence mirage. Now, in the world of artificial intelligence, emergence is literally everywhere right now, especially when people talk about large language models. Back in 2022, researcher Jason Wei and his colleagues formally defined emergent abilities as capacities not anticipated by simple extrapolation from smaller models. It's that wild moment when an AI suddenly seems to learn how to reason or follow super complex instructions or generalize way outside its training data simply because the model got bigger. I mean, it sounds like pure magic, right? But hold on a second. Let's look at the research from Schaefer and his colleagues in 2023. They really dug into the math on this and found that this kind of AI emergence is actually often an illusion. They showed that these sudden, magical jumps in capability are mostly artifacts of how we measure them. They're driven by changes in metrics, setting totally arbitrary performance thresholds, and the specific choice of the evaluation set itself. What looks like an emergent ability is really just a property of scale, training, and measurement, not a brand new kind of entity. The mirage fades pretty quickly when you actually look at the math. Now, what's really interesting as we move to our next slide is the ultimate mystery, Section 4. The boundary case of consciousness. We literally have to pose the ultimate question here. Is human consciousness strongly emergent? Just think about your own subjective experience right now. The taste of a crisp apple, or a sudden feeling of sadness. Does that phenomenal experience, the fact that it feels like something to be you, require a brand new, irreducible rule of reality to exist? We can really contrast the two titans of this debate here. On one side, we've got philosopher David Chalmers fiercely advocating for strong emergence through what he famously calls the hard problem of consciousness. He uses his zombie argument to point out an explanatory gap, basically arguing that having complete physical knowledge of the brain still doesn't explain the subjective feeling of an experience. But on the other side, we have the dominant neurocognitive theories from heavy-hitting scientists like Bars, Dehane, and Tononi. They argue that consciousness can be completely thoroughly explained through informational mechanisms like global workspace theory or integrated information theory. To them, it relies entirely on neurocognitive functions, no ontological rupture required. And here is the massive, almost insurmountable metaphysical roadblock for the strong emergence side, the exclusion argument. Formulated by philosopher Jaegwon Kim, it basically states that if the physical world is causally closed, meaning every physical event has a sufficient physical cause, there is absolutely no room for irreducible mental causes. Essentially, if the basic laws of physics are already enough to explain every single atomic movement in your brain, then injecting some independent, irreducible mental cause into the mix creates a paradox. It means the physical effect is overdetermined. It just doesn't mathematically or logically fit. So the crucial point is coming up right now as we synthesize all of this in Section 5, the final verdict. Let's pull everything together and see where the science actually stands today. In physics and biology, weak emergence is fully supported. We see effective laws and self-organization everywhere, while strong emergence is a hard no. In AI, weak emergence perfectly explains the properties of scale we're seeing, but again, strong emergence is categorically a no. And what about the mind? Well, weak emergence remains highly plausible as an explanation, while strong emergence is fiercely, endlessly debated philosophically. But empirically, in terms of actual hard proof, it remains entirely unproven. So I want to leave you with a really provocative thought to chew on. Will science ever actually find proof of strong emergence? Or is our universe entirely built on weak emergence? Look, the evidence today overwhelmingly suggests that weak emergence is a scientific staple. It's a remarkably vital, useful concept for understanding our incredibly complex world. Strong emergence, though? It remains a fascinating, serious, but totally unconfirmed philosophical hypothesis. Science definitely needs explanatory pluralism to wrap our heads around complex systems, but so far, it hasn't needed to invent any new magic. So what do you think? Does the universe still hold fundamentally undiscovered, irreducible rules? Or is absolutely everything around us just an endlessly complex, beautifully organized cascade of basic physics? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the whole and the parts. Catch you next time.